WWE's Bash at Berlin and NXT No Mercy on Sunday night from Denver, Colorado are taking place this weekend. As of right now, I imagine it's already about to be Friday as we're recording this on Thursday in Berlin. And I imagine all the WWE stars are there. We saw this past weekend Monday Night Raw, a kind of a thin roster because a lot of guys such as Gunther and Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley were already overseas in Europe starting the house show circuit. So kind of a thin roster on Raw. They made it work, though. And heading into Bash at Berlin, let me ask you quickly. Uncle Howdy made his debut against Chad Gable in the main event of Monday Night Raw. We've kind of talked about this before. What do you make of this being a very Raw-specific storyline? Do you say, I'm going to ask you this question, does Uncle Howdy or anyone in the Wyatt Six have a pay-per-view match before year's end?
Absolutely. That's an absolute fact. I think it will happen. I think with the Wyatt Six and Uncle Howdy, a.k.a. Bo Dallas, even the broadcasters, obviously the Michael Coles of the world are really hyping him up, and they're really, pushing this aura that he has and that he commands. And I do think that, and I talked about this on previous episodes, you guys can go back to the archives a few weeks back, maybe a month or so back, maybe 6 weeks, and I mentioned that I think they're going to see how he does on a main event, like not only him but the Wyatt Six as a whole, how they do on a main event of a televised show like Raw, and take the ball and run from it that way. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it was a good match. I thought it was a good way to end the show this past week. I'm buying in on the Wyatt Six. I'm buying in on Uncle Howdy. I do think they're going to, or I would say more likely than not, I could see them probably in a Survivor Series style match down the line. That's my guess because of the size of the faction. Survivor Series is pretty good at having those kind of factions involved. So I'm just waiting to see how the other shoe drops and see if there's going to be another faction. Maybe there's going to be a collision course. I don't know, maybe Judgment Day. That's a possibility. Who knows at this point? But there could be a collision course with any of the factions. There's a few of them in WWE these days. So it's possible that they could do something there, because I do think eventually this whole Chad Gable, this American, I don't know what it is. What is it, All-American or American Made? Well, yeah, American Made, that's what it was. Like, that whole thing is running its course. So I feel like they're going to be in a pay-per-view by these year's end.
Another 5-match pay-per-view card. Have no complaints about that. There hasn't been any except for SummerSlam and WrestleMania that have been larger than that this year. I do think overall the card, it's not, I don't want to say it's weak, but it's I guess it's indicative of a pay-per-view this size. I guess it's just weird kind of reiterating what I've said in the past before about how a lot of these shows get very hyped up when they're put on sale ticket-wise. Tickets are going through the roof for Clash at the Castle or for Backlash or for any of these events in foreign places. And then the card ends up being something similar that you would get if this pay-per-view was taking place in Pittsburgh. I know I went to Payback last year, which was 1 year ago in September, on September the 2nd. So the same time frame, and it was in Pittsburgh. And again, it was it wasn't SummerSlam, and this is not SummerSlam by any stretch of the imagination. We do get a rematch with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre in a strap match. Did they pull the trigger on this one a little too early? Because I feel like this rivalry is not going to be done even after Bash at Berlin.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be ongoing for a little bit while longer. It's just one of those situations where in this strap match, at this point, Drew McIntyre got the win last time they faced off. I think CM Punk is going to get it, and then Drew McIntyre is going to be mad about that. He's going to want revenge, so I think this gets drug out a little bit further. Also, you have the unholy union of Alba Fire and Isla Dawn versus Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill, which I think what has to happen here is if you're going to have the unholy union as champions, you need to have them win clean against Bianca and Jade. I just think right now I feel like the unholy union's kind of like they're swimming, but it's like they're swimming against the current, so to speak, right now. And I think they need to have a really dominant performance against Cargill and Bianca and and win the match. What say you about that?
I think overall this is the weakest match on the card, because if you remember, it was the last two pay-per-views, I think Money in the Bank and SummerSlam, where Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill were featured on SmackDown only and not part of those pay-per-views.
Yeah.
And it's weird for me to say this because Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill are both huge stars, but I guess because how they've been treated lately, it makes me forget that and makes me think when I see this match being announced that this must be for SmackDown the night before. But, I agree. And, I don't know if this is leading to Bianca versus Jade one-on-one coming into the future. But, yeah, I agree that you need them to win clean, or more importantly, you need them to win. You need to really have some emphasis on this tag team division if you wanted to go somewhere. And I think putting the belts back on Bianca and Jade kind of drags it out that this is kind of like a one-team division, and we need to not have that. And I think, Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill give some credibility to it, but now they probably need to lose again and then step away and then find another maybe kind of all-star team that can give some sort of credibility to that. I would say one match that a lot of people are looking forward to, the newly minted Terror Twins, Damian Priest, Rhea Ripley versus the New Judgment Day's members Dirty Dom and Liv. This is going to be an entertaining match. I can't wait for it. It should be good. But obviously there's a lot more between these guys and the Judgment Day coming. Finn Balor still in Judgment Day, Carlito, JD McDonough. So this is kind of, not Judgment Day versus the Terror Twins. My question to you is, what is the future for Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley other than just these feuds with the Judgment Day?
I feel like they're going to go their separate ways, but, down the line at some point, like say Damian's having some trouble, maybe Rhea comes out and like assists, because Rhea, let's be honest, Rhea's shown that she could take out some guys. Like that's just like, she's just a badass, so she could take out somebody, she can help out, or, come to his aid or something, or Rhea Ripley could, be in trouble and Damian Priest comes out and, helps out. I think they're going to go their separate ways, though. I feel like, no offense to either one of them, but I think it's better. They're better off being singles competitors versus kind of a unit at this point. It just doesn't make sense because I don't see any, intergender championships coming along the line down at some point. Yeah. So at this stage of the game, I feel like they're just going to go do their own thing. And I think I could honestly see, Ripley's going to obviously be back in the women's title picture, obviously. I think I feel like Damian's going to be, I feel like in that Intercontinental U.S. title picture for the foreseeable future. So like a higher end mid-carder. And then the Judgment Day as itself, I feel like, the tag championships, I think that's a good spot for them right now. And then I'd like to see Carlito do something. That's what I'd like to see, because Carlito's been not utilized properly. He's been used as a comedic relief, and he does a good job at it. But like Carlito is a very well-known and well-established wrestler. Give Carlito some more run.
Carlito versus Braun Breaker for that IC title, maybe. Get him mixed in that.
I'm okay with that as long as they don't use him as enhancement talent.
Agree there. Kevin Owens, is this part one of this kind of? Listen, it's a weak story. I don't really, it should be an RA match because these are good wrestlers. Obviously, the story isn't necessarily there. Do we see Kevin Owens turn heel and turn this into a rematch of Bad Blood, but this time with Kevin Owens as the heel coming after Cody Rhodes?
Well, you just mentioned it, Bad Blood. You got to sell Bad Blood somehow, right? It makes too much sense. So yeah, to answer your question, I think there's going to be a nice little switch for KO, and I think he's going to embrace the heel again. And I feel like there's going to be some shenanigans, so to speak. But I do still think Cody Rhodes he's not losing that championship. It'll still be a really good match. I think it's going to be very competitive. But I think you're right. I think you're hinting at it. I think Kevin Owens will be turning heel very soon.
Gunther versus Randy Orton. Is Gunther going to SmackDown without a championship? And is Randy Orton coming to Raw as the World Heavyweight Champion?
I say no. I think Gunther's going to keep the championship. As much as I love Randy Orton, been a big fan of his, for the 20 plus years he's been in the business. He's been one of my personal favorites. I've mentioned that plenty of times over the years. I just don't think now is the right time for Randy Orton to take over the championship. I know they're hyping up that he could finish. He could be in second place for 15 title reigns for the world championship. I don't think it happens yet. I think Gunther is going to have what he's always had, and that's long title reigns. I don't see Gunther losing this title anytime soon.
I agree. Like, that's Gunther's MO. He's, long title reigns. So that would be, I don't know what that would accomplish, having him lose only a month into his reign. And I have to say, the guys in Berlin, they got a long flight because they don't just have to come back to the East Coast, but they're making him go all the way to Denver, which is essentially 2-hour time difference from the East Coast. So if you're watching in Denver this Saturday, it'll be on at, I think the pay-per-view's on at 11 a.m. for you. But then they're coming there for Raw. So right after Raw, Gunther's got the flight from Germany, which if I believe is right, is about a 7-hour flight from Germany to New York City. So at least 9 to Denver for Monday Night Raw. And Denver, though, some people are going to be getting an early trip there, and that's if you're part of NXT, because they're going to be there on Sunday for No Mercy. I imagine the attendance will probably be a little bit better for Raw on Monday night because it's the WWE main product, but it's part of this little kind of dual booking thing. I think they're doing it later in October with Halloween Havoc with an NXT pay-per-view and Raw the next night from Hershey, Pennsylvania. But we got Joe Hendry. He's the hottest thing in the world right now in terms of wrestling. If you're a wrestling fan, maybe outside of wrestling you don't know, but inside of wrestling, you know who Joe Hendry is. He is the social media star, if you will. He is the one that people, if they know nothing about him, they just know about him, and they know about the gimmick that is him. Yes. And they talk about how he is a TNA, registered, paid wrestler in an NXT ring. I think that's a little, you're being a little marks if you're reading too much into that. Yeah. Because we've obviously learned about the relationship and the fact that people like Ethan Page, right, is now a WWE employee coming over when he was a TNA employee. So for all I know, is Joe Hendry could potentially be getting paid by both sides of things right now. I don't think he's like, this isn't WCW. He isn't Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Like, is he part of the other company for real? He's a TNA wrestler in an NXT ring, but I think the relationship is pretty strong here as he's main eventing this pay-per-view against Ethan Page. That is interesting in all of itself because of the fact that, 6 months ago, Ethan Page versus Joe Hendry is your main event for like a TNA Plus event in Louisville, Kentucky. And now it's the main event of an NXT pay-per-view. And Trick Williams is the guest referee. Doesn't matter if Joe Hendry wins this championship. Is that going to be a big shock to you? Is that going to really send this kind of relationship into hyperdrive between NXT and TNA? Yeah, I do. I think if he does win, I think it has to kind of, it's almost like kicking on the NOS in your, in a super vehicle and just going fast. I think that's it could happen. I honestly don't think it happens. I think WWE is content with like having these competitors there, like a Zachary Wentz, for example. I just don't think they're gonna put the main championship on Joe Hendry at this point, even though Joe Hendry is probably one of the most over wrestlers in the game today. And I mean, like you mentioned, non-wrestling fans know who he is because all you got to, if you say Joe Hendry, you just say, I believe, and I believe in Joe Hendry. I mean, it's a huge thing. It's very popular. I think Joe Hendry is a lot like what LA Knight was like 2 years ago in the sense that if you were to say something about LA Knight and like what's your favorite move of his or what's your favorite match of his, I don't remember. I don't know. I have to think about that. But you do like saying and you like the gimmick, and you like his music, and you like that nonsense, and that's kind of what Joe Hendry is. To be honest with you, I'm not sitting over here when Joe Hendry came out at the TNA event I went to a couple months ago and thought much about, I can't wait to see him in the ring. It was more about, I can't wait to see how the crowd reacts when he comes out and plays along to his music and claps and does all that nonsense. That's how I know him mostly. Do you think he wins the match? I don't. Oh, I don't know, because I mean, his He is so hot right now. And I think no discredit to people like Moose or Josh Alexander. But WWE likes to strike sometimes when the iron's hot, and you got to maybe strike and give him the belt and really find a way to take this NXT thing and really transform it to newer heights by having this gimmick as your champion and getting to see his face at sporting events and other nonsense where you see the fat head of his like in different places. So, it's not so much you're going to get to see his face on TNA and NXT, but you get to see his face at sporting events. You get to see his face like at concerts. Like, it's just a silly gimmick. I think there was the big sign at the Stanley Cup last year.
So if you can't do 50-50 because that's a cop-out. If you had to put a percentage on it, what's the percentage Joe Henry walks out as champion?
I'd probably say 80%.
Really? You really think
I'm going to
so?
say 80%. You said I can't do 50-50. So I got to do 80%, maybe 75%. He's walking out as champion.
Okay.
My question, Wesley's Zachary Wentz. Are you interested in this match here?
Yeah. I mean, it's Rascal's business. You know what I mean? Like, just the way it's been built up. I mean, obviously, I saw Zachary Wentz was recently on NXT, and it's hacked Wesley. So I'm kind of paying back the favor a little bit there from weeks prior. And I think it's, when you have these rivals, and it's amplified too because everybody that watches NXT, or at least the majority, know the history between those guys as MSK in NXT, but also before WWE, what they had that friendship. They worked together for many, many years. The Rascals, the whole thing. So I think when you put it all together, it's a very intriguing match. I think it's going to be very fast paced. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And if I had to pick somebody to win, I think Zachary Wentz is winning this match.
I'm going to go back before we end this real quick. I'm going to go back on my pick with Joe Henry because I'm thinking more about Trick Williams being the special guest referee. I think he's going to cost Joe Henry. Or more importantly, just try to cost maybe like Ethan Page. I think that's where some of his animosity starts mostly. Yeah. So Ethan Page is going to retain because of that factor. So that's where I'm changing there as No Mercy is this weekend in Denver. And quick question from you. Where do you think they're going to pick for Bash in Berlin to be next year?
Probably somewhere in Europe. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Bash in Berlin in London would be cool. Or how about Bash in Berlin in England or in Paris? Bash in Berlin in Paris.
I mean, that'd be cool. I mean, I could, maybe they go to Spain. Who knows?
Bash in Berlin in Barcelona.
Yeah, Bash at Barcelona. Bash in Barcelona. There you go.
Oh, I didn't even think they could change the name of the pay-per-view. I was just thinking they're going to move Bash in Berlin.
Yeah, but you can make it work though. Bash in Barcelona. That kind of rolls off okay. I mean, yeah, I think they're going to stick with the shtick of going across the pond. I think they're going to stick
with that. I just think I was just making a joke because I think this is kind of a dumb name for a pay-per-view. Backlash is fine. The other ones are fine. I'll be honest with you. The name of this event kind of did downplay it a little bit when they were hyping up some of these, I guess, events that were like, trying to get tourism and people to fly to them. I think Bash in Berlin did kind of downplay this event because it does sound like a bona fide Coliseum video special, like from the early 90s. Because like I said, like WrestleMania isn't called like the Tussle in Texas, right? Because it's So when you hear that, you know what I mean?
No, I get it.
It sounds like what they hype up house shows sometimes. You know what I mean? Like when you go to a house show and they're like, it's going to be a Syracuse street fight or it's going to be a Rochester street fight, and you're like, you're just putting that name on something.
Yeah, it's like you're slapping on a pig, so to speak.
Yeah. So Bash in Berlin, it just tells me that this isn't the start of the next Big Five pay-per-view on WWE's calendar, because it has Berlin in the name. So it sounds like a bona fide super show.
I would say this. I would go off of the European side of it and make it almost like a designated European pay-per-view that they do every year.
I wonder where, if you're a hardcore wrestling fan out there, now this got Bash in the name. Would you put this in the chronologically or the chrono? I don't know the word I'm looking for. The history, I guess. When you're hyping up history and you're putting it all together, right? Because we got NXT No Mercy this weekend. We obviously know No Mercy name has some lineage. Would you put the WWE Bash in Berlin? Would you put that in the Great American Bash category? Would you tie that in there as a continuation of that event because it's got the name Bash? Because I remember Great American Bash before it went out as a WWE main pay-per-view. The last few years, it was just called The Bash. It was WWE Bash. Before then, it just stopped being a pay-per-view, and now it's returned as Bash in Berlin. So would you put it there? That'll be a question out to the universe. Is this the return of the Great American Bash, if you will? And I will say, when it comes to Wikipedia, they have the Bash in Berlin just listed when it comes to its chronology as WWE in Europe pay-per-views. I don't think, though, it has it tied with former WWE Bashes.